Hey guys, we made it to a beautiful park. Gonna check out a really capable all-mountain electric bike today. This is the BULLS Adventure EVO AM 27.5, and that designates the plus size tires on this thing. We got boost hub spacing, 148 in the rear, 110 up front. That gives you a nice sturdy spoke bracing angle. We've got 203 millimeter hydraulic disc brakes, MT5 Magural quad piston calipers. I added the kickstand so I could get some photos and stuff. And this is an 18 millimeter bolt pattern. It's nice that BULLS includes that option on the frame. A lot of these mountain bikes, you know, you don't have a kickstand because when you're actually riding off-road, it would be going like the whole time. But if you park this in your garage and you don't want it to tip into your car, or maybe you're just using it to get around town, or actually doing some like bike packing or trekking or something like long distance, since this is a dual battery electric bike, it is sometimes nice to have a kickstand. Again, this is not the right one. I just sort of making do with a kickstand that's designed to clamp around the left chainstay. The thing is, these chainstays are extra thick, extra sturdy, and so I'm just using one bolt. Do not recommend that, but we're gonna make do today. This one's pretty cool because it's got adjustable length and stuff. It's just a handy option. I want to call out a few things before we actually take this thing off and go through the rest of the details here. They've got this really interesting top tube rack. It almost looks like a luggage rack for like the top of a car or something, a safari rack. I don't know what you could put here. Sometimes there's little goodie bags and things. Usually they Velcro around the stem area, like the steer tube. This one has these special spacers that allow for internal cable routing and stuff. It's very fancy stuff. It's all MonkeyLink, so we have like a magnetic adapter up here on the front, and it's wired in. It runs off those batteries, so you can use a headlight, and it's actually aimable and stuff. There's a rear light option as well, and they've just got little reflector inserts. But again, these are magnetic. Really neat that you could just add the lights and then take them off if you're parked somewhere where, you know, people could mess with your bike. I think MonkeyLink actually has these fenders and a bunch of other cool options. Just nice to see. Same thing down here with the magnetic bottle adapter. I think it's like 50 bucks for the bottle, and maybe 170 if you want the light combination I'm talking about. But getting back to this rack, this is something I hadn't really seen before. And, you know, it's like, are you going to use a goodie bag? Or maybe you could add a bottle cage like I've done here. So I added this because I wanted to see how it actually worked. This is what it'd look like on the other side. See, so we got the bolts there for adding something, maybe a folding lock, a water bottle, any accessory that would mount with this pattern. The reason I tried getting a bottle holster here is that I wasn't sure how it was going to work. Like, you could see this bottle actually sticks up above the handlebar, which is kind of, it really limits your steering. And I actually have another water bottle here in the car. I'll just grab this one. This one's shorter. This is kind of your standard height water bottle. And when I tried this, it was kind of the same thing. It sort of sticks up a little bit too high. It kind of makes contact a little bit. It's better, and they're even shorter, almost like little tool compartment boxes. People put band-aids in there, or, you know, all kinds of different stuff in those little bottle options things. But, you know, worst case, you can put the bottle there. You get the MonkeyLink one. I think it's just interesting. It's cool to see a company experimenting with this kind of stuff. For me, this bike is actually somewhat comparable to the recent Mueller Delight. It is a full suspension electric bike that now has dual battery options, and they have a mountain model too, so that's almost directly competitive with this. But this has the 4-bar horse link rear suspension design, and maybe sort of customized for BULLS a little bit, but you can see where the brake is mounted, and then the pivot here being sort of in front of and below the axle. So this is meant to isolate your pedal inputs and the motor inputs from braking, and so you're really not going to lose as much power and efficiency to bobbing, and when you're braking, it's not going to cause squat where the bike sort of flexes down with suspension. It's a much nicer suspension design. It also isolates the movement of the rear swing arm, so this is going to be a little bit more vertical instead of like a rainbow if this was just a big swing arm type thing. And that's what the recent Mueller Delight seems to have. It's just like one big piece of metal that goes up and down, and the potential for kickback. So when a wheel goes up in a rainbow pattern, you get a little bit of slack in the chain right here, and then that can kind of mess up the drivetrain a little bit. This is a mid-drive Bosch Performance Line CX, like their most powerful motor, up to 85 Newton meters of torque now. But I love that they've got the standard size chainring. You can see here, that's a 34 tooth, narrow wide chainring, and we do have a plastic guide here, so the chain's not gonna, it's got two things keeping it on track. And again, isolating that suspension. This is more of a real mountain bike. In my opinion. I mean, that's how I look at this thing. The recent Mueller bikes are cool because they have like a suspended rear rack, and I think the travel on those might be like 120. This is 150, so it is an all-mountain kind of enduro type of platform, which means you're just going to have that softer ride, a kind of a slacker head tube angle. You're going to be able to take on bigger hits and actually ride it in some pretty extreme terrain. The only thing is you've got a lot of weight here. One battery here, one battery here. Here they are on the ground. I wanted to show you all this before we get out there. And that adds some weight, you know. It's like 5.5 pounds for this one, 7 pounds for that one. At least the power tube is right there in the down tube. And man, they went with the 625. There is a power tube 500. You know, this one weighs a little bit more, but you're getting over a kilowatt hour of capacity. So, you know, easily 100 miles on this thing. And it all comes back to what level of assist and, you know, the inflation on your tires and what the terrain really looks like. But this thing is super capable. And the really cool thing is you don't have to use both batteries. You could just put the down tube battery and leave the Power Pack 500 off the bike to save those 5+ pounds, or vice versa. You can even ride it with just the Power Pack 500, but then you'd have weight high up. You want the weight low and centered as much as possible. So again, I think they've done a good job with that, with the motor, with the battery. And then I just love the suspension design. So before I take the bike off, I want to call out the charger here too. This is a 4-amp charger. It weighs 1.7 pounds. It's the fast charger from Bosch. It's going to fill these much more efficiently. You can charge them individually off the bike, or you can charge them both kind of simultaneously while they're mounted to the bike. There is the charging port right there. That's also the key slot. I kind of wish that, you know, a lot of times I'm looking at bikes and stuff, and it's like, how do you get the batteries off? There are 2 key slots here, and this key slot is on the other side of the frame. Do you see it there? So this is the drivetrain side of the bike. Ideally, all the keys and charging ports would be over here. So this is a minor gripe for me. I love that the main charging port and kind of the primary battery, it's all right here. We've got this nice cover, and it closes pretty easily, and it closes sort of the direction of water and wind and everything, so it's going to stay closed, it's not going to get blown open. Great choice here. It's up high, it's easy to access, and if you had this bike standing on a kickstand, it's gonna do really well. So BULLS has done an excellent job there. Here is the internal cable routing, and we've got a little pad at the bottom with some of that like memory foam stuff that keeps the battery from vibrating. Really nice motor protector, skid plate down here. The new motor from Bosch, 4th generation, uses magnesium parts and stuff. It's lightweight, it's compact, it's super powerful, shorter chainstay reach because of this. So it's really dialed in, and it's one of my favorite motors. Again, I'll talk a little bit about that when we get out there, but I wanted to call that out. And if you do only go with one battery, let's say you only use the power tube 625, you can use this little rubber plug thing and put it right there so that water and stuff won't touch those blades, and it's just going to keep it a little bit more sealed. You'll still have this chunky thing there, but I think that's really cool, very thoughtful. And they give you a bunch of keys with this bike because you really have 2 locking cores, but they are matched, and these are the ABIS keys that can be keyed alike. So you can get like a folding lock or a U-lock and have them use the exact same battery key. And I just love that, because then you don't have so much clutter. It's not going to be as easy to kind of forget the keys and have a huge keychain in your pocket. Lots of really cool stuff here. So again, I'm going to take the bike off the car. I think I might do one demo with the bottle, but I'm not going to ride with the bottle because I don't want to get goofed up there. Okay, so we've put the charging port end in first, kind of tip it up in there. One of the frustrating things about the Bosch locking core design here is that you have to actually open it up before the battery can be pushed in. You can't just shove it in, and that can be a lot to do. So I'm doing it while it's on the car. You heard it click, so now it's in this sort of like almost connected position, and then a little bit more force and it clicks all the way. So that's cool. gravity is working against you. The battery is kind of heavy. There's not a ton of space in here. So the way this is designed is when you unlock the bike battery, it goes out to that first sort of temporary position, and then you have to push this button here to release it the rest of the way. So for me, there's a little bit of a complaint, and I mentioned it before when I've looked at the design from Bosch. I kind of wish you could just shove the battery in there, because it requires two hands to sort of unlock it, push the battery in, and then click it all the way, and it's just a couple steps. And then here's the plastic shield. I love that BULLS is going with these plastic shields now, instead of, before they had these metal ones that were like bolted to the battery, and it just added weight. It was kind of unnecessary. Sure, this isn't paint matched silver like the rest of the bike, but it's gonna be much less expensive to replace, and you can kind of borrow a naked power tube 625 from anyone, anywhere, versus having a really proprietary one. So good job. This is the release mechanism. It's not the best, in my opinion, to be honest with you. You kind of put it up like that, and then, you know, release it at the bottom. And it's like, really, there we go. I'm using two hands to get it up there, because at first it seems like it's connected, but then if you don't really push, it actually isn't super connected. And you wouldn't want to lose this and run over it, or, you know, crash or something like that. The power pack is by far my favorite. You know, 5.5 pounds for this thing. It's got a little handle at the top. It's 500 watt hours, and yeah, it's just a lot simpler. You don't need the key to put this thing in. Just line it up. It's a little bit tight in here, and then, okay, same thing. See, it's not quite there yet. I gotta push it. There we go. We got the click. So it takes a little bit of extra energy, but if it wasn't quite secure, you could see how this would tumble down and get kicked on the way down. So, you know, there's definitely compromise here. They've had to really raise this top tube, and they've got this really aggressive angle down, so the standover height is as low as possible, but it's higher than a lot of other bikes. Thankfully, we do have a seat post dropper, but still, usually, you know, if you're riding off-road and you need to put a foot down or kind of jump off the bike, this is a heavy bike. It's like 63 pounds, and then you're kind of stabilizing the bike to one side, and you got one leg over the bar, maybe not quite. It's just a lot. This bike is pretty beefy, and that's one of the real trade-offs, in my opinion, is for that extra battery capacity, you're compromising on the frame, the weight, and just, you know, yeah, just be careful. It's a big thing. Okay guys, I got the bike off the car. I wanted to give you the bottle demo. So this is the shorter water bottle, shortest one I have. You turn and it collides right there. And if you look at that front wheel, I could definitely see myself needing to turn at least that much, you know, in slow riding conditions. Maybe when you're going faster, there's enough room and stuff, but this is an all mountain bike, and sometimes there's switchbacks, or there's a big rock, or, you know, a lot of times you are going a little bit slower to be more precise and intentional with your steering. And if you're already trying to balance the weight of the bike, and then you're like, oh, and you need to make a quick movement, and you hit that, you can kind of force past it. I don't want to break the cage. I can see it flexing down there. That's a carbon fiber cage. It's meant to be really lightweight, and I was thinking maybe the bottle would just pop out, but it collides a little bit, and it makes me wonder, you know, if this was just moved a little bit further back. You don't want to, if I stand over the bike, again, here's the high standover height that I was talking about. It looks low down there, but the truth is, you stand in front of the saddle, and the saddle's kind of hitting me in my back right there. So you could kind of rack yourself if you weren't careful. I have a fairly tall inseam. By the way, this is just sort of one of the medium models. There are 4 frame sizes, so it's awesome. You can really fit this thing perfectly to your body for most people, but still pretty high standover height. And I feel like, you know, if I was pedaling on this thing, I still have some, you know, I don't know, kind of pretending that I'm pedaling here. I guess, you know, I'd go right about there, so they could maybe bring it back an inch or something, and then that would give you a little bit more room. I just feel like there's a little bit of room for improvement on this design, and unfortunately I don't have the Reese & Mueller Delight here to compare it to. They also have these almost like clip-on bottle, they're not really Bosses, but they work with like a proprietary bottle, much more like this MonkeyLink, and they have like a cool solution right up here near the sort of the head tube and steering. And I feel like it might work a little bit better. This just seems a little crowded. I found a nice little spot to stop and take a look at the bike and go through some of the rest of the details here. And this thing is just so much fun to ride, super floaty. This is hardly cross country, you know, we're just on a gravel trail, but it's a really wet day. So thought this would be a nice place to ride it around and just get a feel for the bike. One thing I'm noticing right away is that it has two different tire options here. So we got a Schwalbe, I think this is a Hans Dampf in the rear, and then Magic Mary up front. And the knobs on the front tire are spaced further apart and they're deeper. So that's going to give you like traction and control while you're steering. It also has Addict's soft rubber compound versus in the rear, they have speed grip. So they both have a lot of the rest of the same features, right? 27.5 by 2.8 plus size, and that's back to the boost hub spacing and the through axles and everything. But the other thing about them is they've got this like Evo Evolution and then APX reinforced and TLE. These are more premium and they are tubeless ready. So you can take the air pressure all the way down to like 17. I think it's like 17 to 38 PSI. Yeah, there it is right there stamped on the side. It's a pretty good option. Bulls does a lot of their own hardware, so they're teaming up with leading companies like Fox, which is awesome, and then Shimano, but these wheels are actually theirs. This is a 12-speed cassette, pretty impressive, 10 to 51 tooth, and that's very, very wide, so it's going to give you a really slow, powerful starting gear. That's the tallest sprocket right here, the 51 tooth. And then when you get going a little bit faster, even though this is a class 1 electric bike, it only goes to 20 miles per hour, 32-kilometer top speed with motor support. Of course, you can go faster than that, especially if you're bombing it down a huge hill. So you've got your 10-tooth sprocket right there. And in between, by having 12 gears, the steps are just a little bit shorter, and you're not getting quite the huge leap and change in pedal cadence, which I really appreciate. Then we got Shimano XT derailleur. It's sort of a longer cage right here. It does have the one-way clutch, so we have it engaged right now, and that just reduces, it kind of makes it more firm, so you're not getting as much bounce. It's just going to be tighter. Of course, they do have this really nice plastic slap guard as well to protect the frame, but I call that out. Not every Shimano derailleur has that clutch, and it's neat when you open it up, you take this little lever and take it into the off position. Now this is a lot softer. See, it's going to be much easier to do rear wheel maintenance, and both wheels do have quick release on those through axles. So we'll come over here and it just sort of threads in, and it's in a nice position there. It's not going to get kicked. Same up here in the front, and of course with the Fox forks, some of the nicer ones have this little dial here, so you can set it up and point that lever in any direction you want, ideally sort of back and maybe up a little bit. That's what I end up going for. This is a 36mm stanchion, black anodized. Same with the dropper post right there, same with the rear suspension. So again, 150mm of travel on this thing. Very nice setup. Who's gonna go for it? Nope. Well, maybe. Woo! Yes! It's really not that deep. Kind of neat to see that. I got all the safety gear on him. So of course, this is an air fork, and you can sort of increase the compression here by increasing the air pressure. We also have, maybe that's more of a preload sort of an adjustment there. We have an actual compression, kind of a clicker. It doesn't click, it slides beautifully over here, so you can make it more firm, almost like a lockout, and then soft, which is always my preference. It's a lot more comfortable, and then with the lower tire pressure and the deeper knobs, this thing is just super comfortable that way. But again, less efficient bobbing can happen in that case. And then down here, we have rebound. So we can take off this little cap, and underneath there's another dial which allows you to basically slow or speed up the rebound. Sometimes if it's really fast, the bike kind of bounces, but if you have like a and it just sort of slides back a little bit slower, the wheels are going to stay more planted and you're going to have a better time steering this bike. So again, with the longer travel, it's nice to have a fork that is so adjustable in all these different ways. And then the wheels and stuff, the rims are very nice. These are 30mm inner width on the asymmetric design. That's what I was talking about before. Black spokes, black rims, black everything with all the accents and stuff. I think it looks really nice. Nice color. They don't really have any other color options for the bike, but what I'm riding on here is the 44. So having those different frame sizing options is pretty nice. Back here on the Fox Flow DPS, this one also has compression and rebound adjust. So they really match nicely that way. For the dropper seat posts, I think they also come in 3 different lengths or sort of extensions, depending on what frame size you get. So that's nice too. This one, for me, this bike is a little bit on the small side because I have such a long legs basically. So I would probably raise this. We do have quick release right here. This is 30.9mm. You could always replace this dropper with another one. I don't think there's a need to have like a suspension seat post because everything else is dialed in so nicely. And while we're talking about touch points here, really nice ergon locking grips. These are they're more flat, but they kind of feel semi-ergonomic. They're just a nice little upgrade. And maybe moving on to the brakes here. Actually, no. I want to talk about the trigger shifters. I should have called this out when we were talking about the drivetrain. It is such a nice drivetrain. And then the SLX shifters, we've got a multi-shift low lever and then a 2-way high lever. So you can kind of push it with your thumb or you can pull it with your trigger finger. And I almost always use my thumb because my fingers are up here on the brake lever. These are 2-finger levers, Magural MT5. This is sort of an entry point on the gravity line from Magural, and you can see the way that rod is pushing in. It's designed to be very low friction and give you a really precise actuation, okay? So sometimes on the Shimano levers and stuff, they kind of go inwards. These ones just go down, and they're just designed to be super. Of course, they do have adjustable reach as well, so you can bring those in and get your hand position right. And then down to these huge rotors, 203mm. This is exactly what you'd want and what you'd expect. Still, it's a lot of weight, 65 pounds on this bike, and when you're going fast, especially downhill, maybe you're using that 10-tooth sprocket, you need to be able to stop and have that power, but also that cooling, and that's why they have such large rotors. And then you get a little bit more braking traction and surface area with quad piston caliper versus just one circle that's going in and out. You have 2 in a line, spreads out the force. It's really an upgrade that you want to see, and I like that they have it on both rotors here. Quad piston in the rear as well. Be careful with these though. Sometimes, like if the kickstand or if the bike got laid down or something, if you warp one of those or if you touch it, the oils from your hands can make it squeak, and then you could also hear the zinging if that got bent out of place. And then here are the pedals. These are just nylon platform pedals. It's decent. 170mm FSA cranks, aluminum alloy. Bosch does have, I think now they use like the ISIS spline. They were using like a mini ISIS spline before. We're gonna do some rides in a minute, but I'm just so impressed with how small this thing is, how lightweight it is, how much power you get from it, and it's actually a lot quieter than the old Performance Line CX models. I'm surprised because I feel like I've ridden some other Gen 4 and there's a lot of power there, and they can really start to sound like Ree! But this one's doing great. It's super quiet. It's actually amazing to me. The way that the drive system works is there's a motor controller, and it's measuring the 2 batteries, and it's kind of pulling from whichever one has more charge level in it. So that's kind of nice. Same thing with charging. So you plug in one place and it fills both of these batteries dynamically, whichever one needs the charge first. And before I get back to the motor, I just want to say, it's so nice that you can take the batteries off this bike because extreme cold, extreme heat can be hard on them. It's a good idea if you're going to store this bike in a garage because it is so long and it's just a big thing to maybe take the batteries and put them in a cool, dry location. Try to keep them between 20 and 80% charged if you aren't using the bike for an extended period of time. letting them go all the way down isn't great. So I could see myself taking that second battery off frequently if I own this bike, just to save weight. Like, I'm not going on a long ride, I want to save weight on my car rack, and I don't want the extra weight of like the handling and stuff, so I would take that one off. I just want to make sure that's topped off in the meantime. So anyway, the motor controller down here, it's looking at how much battery capacity is available, and it's also listening to sort of the pedal pressure that's happening here. And this thing is measuring your rear wheel speed, your pedal cadence, and your pedal torque. Okay, 3 signals over 1,000 times per second. And you'll notice there isn't one of those like little magnet things. We don't have a little plastic housing measuring your rear wheel speed. There isn't a magnet on a spoke. It's actually all in here. So it's much more tucked away. There it is. See it, the magnet? That is a really cool upgrade. It's just a lot cleaner. It's not going to affect sort of the balance of your wheel and make it you know, extra cables right here. I just think that is so cool. That's something that a lot of the Bosch powered bikes are going to, a lot of the fancier ones. So I wanted to point that out as a nice upgrade. So those 3 signals, it's listening to those, and if it senses that you're shifting gears, it dynamically eases off some of the pressure so that you don't get mashing, you don't get bending these teeth and maybe breaking that chain, because it is up to 85 Newton meters of torque. This thing has 4 assist levels, and it has EMTB mode, which is a setting that allows the bike to go from lower levels of assist to higher, based more on torque. So it's not just like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1, 2 variable and then 4. And so I find myself riding an EMTB a lot. And that's if you're going to do wheelies, or if you're in a precarious situation and there's like the edge of a cliff and some rocks and stuff. EMTB is great because you can go from like gentle, delicate to then just taking off once you actually apply more pedal pressure. It's one of my favorite motors, and it's just gotten better and better in terms of the size and the placement and the noise. The peak torque on the motor is 85 Newton meters, but if we're in eco mode, you get 40 Newton meters, tour 50 Newton meters, EMTB up to 85 Newton meters, and same with turbo, 85 Newton meters. And the front spokes are 14 gauge, while the rear are 13. So a little bit thicker in the rear, maybe just to handle the extra power from that motor and some of the bigger hits, and a lot of your body weight is sort of up high and in the rear. The front might flex a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit lighter weight. I was just looking at a Gazelle C380, and that one had a new Vinci and a continuously variable transmission versus a cassette derailleur setup, and it had the performance line, just straight up performance, not CX. It's actually a little heavier, like almost a pound heavier than this one, and it was able to pedal backwards. I noticed that with the performance line CX, it does not cycle the chain backwards. You can pedal backwards, and there's a little bit of resistance there. You can hear the clicking, and that's nice, so you don't accidentally kick the pedal and have it, you know, hit your shin on the way around. I just wanted to point that out, because sometimes in terms of like drivetrain maintenance and stuff, it's nice to be able to cycle backwards, but that's not the case here. So I moved the bike just a little bit so we could see the display in a bit more shade, not have this high contrast. Before we do that, I'm just reflecting on just the cons, like the trade-offs on this bike. And, you know, the main one is just it's so expensive, $73.99 USD. That's a lot to pay for a bike that's really similar to a lot of the other all-mountain options from BULLS, or even cross-country, that just don't have the second battery option. And when you look at the frame, I mean, it's wider, it's reinforced, there's extra welding. They had to go to a lot of trouble to make this thing, even a gusset, like strong enough, and just to have the extra electronics. And, you know, Bosch stuff tends to be expensive. It's some of the best on the market. So between the weight, the slightly higher standover height, the higher price, those are things I'd consider. It's like, do you really need 2 batteries? You know, you could maybe go for a Reese and Mueller, but you're going to pay just as much, if not more. And maybe you get that rear rack option. But if you're actually doing mountain biking, if you're actually going over big rocks and stuff, and you want a better suspension design for that type of riding, this is clearly better, in my opinion. And it's a good looking bike too. I mean, it's got all the nice hardware and really nice internally routed cables and fancy displays and stuff, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. You know, we talked about the triggers over here, the brakes, and then we've got the dropper line right there. The last thing is really the display, and I love that they've gone with the Kiox. It is removable. You can sort of more permanently secure it with a little set screw in the bottom, but it's kind of nice that it's removable. If you crash, the thing will just fall off. It won't get broken off. And if you're parking at a bike rack or something, you're concerned about it, again, this is something you can take, and then people can't really mess around with your bike. Over here on the left, we have a button pad that's fairly reachable while riding. We've got a plus, minus, left, right, and then select. And then on top, we actually have a walk mode button, which is nice for a bike that's so heavy, 65 pounds. You can kind of limp forward with this if you got a flat tire, or maybe the terrain is just too technical for you and you want to walk the bike. That is nice. The other cool thing about this display is that it's compatible with like the Bluetooth app from Bosch, and so you can do some motor tuning and do some updates and adjust a few other things. There's also a heart rate monitor option, so you can do a little bit of fitness training with this. Really cool to see. It's one of the new generation of displays. Bosch has like the Purion display, which is a really small, simple grayscale one, and I actually kind of like the button clicking on that one better. These are a little stiff sometimes. And then they have the Intuvia. The Intuvia is my favorite. It's like a really big display, but again, it's grayscale. It doesn't have the apps and stuff like this. Now, this one's compact. It's good for mountain biking because it kind of stays out of the way. It's a little bit invisible. This is not, you know, this is clearly an e-bike. People walking by like, oh, is that electric? And, you know, obviously, but if you took this battery off, it would become a lot more stealth. I mean, the people are starting to recognize like, oh yeah, that's a motor. But from the other side, I guess just in terms of being stealth and having a display that's not going to get damaged as much, this is nice. But they also now have the Nion from Europe, and this thing is much bigger, and it has like turn-by-turn GPS options that can sync with your phone, and it's a little bit easier to read. For me, I'm kind of nearsighted, so when you're up here, this display gets a little bit small. So having your phone and maybe using that in combination with this is a good option. And there is a USB port built into the bottom of this, micro USB. You can see the little cover right there, so you can charge off of this. And I have an iPhone. I think it's able to put enough power out to get that thing going. It's really neat the way this is set up, and frankly, it's a mountain bike, so it's like maybe you put the phone there, or get one of those goodie bags with a clear plastic thing, and you shove it in there. And it's neat to think that you could have some options, and you could do more with that electric power than just run the bike. You can charge your devices, your smartphone and stuff. So let's turn this thing on. We press the power button right there, we click it. This thing has adaptive backlighting, so it senses like how bright it is outside, and then it responds. Right now we're in off, which is kind of nice. I'm gonna click the plus button to go up to Eco, Tour, EMTB, that's the dynamic mode I was talking about, and then Turbo. And let's talk about what each level means. So if you're putting out 100%, how much power does it give you? Well, it gives you 60% matching in Eco, 140 in Tour, and then EMTB 140 to 340. That's that dynamic option. And then Turbo is just straight up 340 for high power, high performance. And I love that with two batteries attached, the display on this one kind of changes a little bit to show you the charge level of each of these batteries. So it seems like I've been using battery 2 for the most part on this ride. And I think it kind of lowers one, and then it lowers the other, and it lowers the one. And it kind of tries to keep them balanced, but it's not pulling from both simultaneously. I think it's sort of going back and forth. And that's the same thing with charging. Well, I love that they have a little infographic for the battery that includes a charge level percentage up there, 98%. Much better than just having like 5 bars and leaving you to guess. There's also range estimate that we'll get to in a little bit, and of course the light button down here. So really just 2 buttons on the display itself, power and then the lights. And I turn the lights off. You could leave them on if you wanted, but we don't have any lights connected to this, right? There's no MonkeyLink lights at this time, but if we did, that's how you would turn them on. You got the little light button right there, and you can see the icon at the top. Okay, so back to this little button pad, going right and going left. If we go to the right, see we're kind of on the first menu here. If we go to the right, we've got assist level again, and it kind of changes colors, which is nice because you might not be able to read it, but you could at least say, oh, green, I'm in Eco. And then once you're up at red, clearly that's Turbo. You can back off a step, and EMTB, that's my favorite mode. This little chart fills up depending on how hard you're working and how hard the motor is working. So it sort of fills in, it's showing the motor power and then your power next to it. It's a really cool readout, neat little infographic that Bosch has created. Got a clock, range. Range is the thing I was talking about. If we go up to like Turbo, it dynamically says, well, you're only going to get 103 kilometers in this mode. But if we go down to Eco, it's all the way up to 211 kilometers, so pretty impressive. I'm going to go right again for the next menu. Trip distance, trip time, my power in watts, RPM, that's pedal cadence, and then beats per minute, that's heart. So if you had a heart rate monitor set up with this thing, RPM is cool. This motor can actually support above 120 RPM, which is fast. That means how fast you're pedaling. Some more basic motors or just cheaper motors, they don't support that high cadence. And what that means for me is, especially on a mountain bike, you're going down, you're on the flats, and then, oh, here comes a hill. I always shift down. Remember, we have that huge 51 tooth sprocket. When you shift down, you want the motor to keep up with that higher pedal cadence so you don't lose steam going into the hill. Like, sometimes there's this like positive feedback loop it's really frustrating, where it's like I shift down and then the motor can't keep up, and then I shift down again and the motor can't keep up, and it's like you lose all that speed and stuff. So I love that the Bosch motor can support those higher RPM pedal rates. Go to the next menu, got average speed, max speed, and you know, that makes sense, 32 kilometers per hour. It's a heavy bike. I haven't ridden it faster than that because we don't have any big hills here. That's basically how fast the motor supports on this bike, being class 1. Distance, range, my power. So it's just another like orientation of these menus. Calories burned, total distance, and then, you know, plan a route in the eBike Connect smartphone app. That's what I was talking about. You do route planning, all kinds of cool stuff, and it's a whole nother topic to get into. Here on that, back on that first menu, see it says settings. At first I was like, oh, is it touchscreen? But no, it's not. It does have Gorilla Glass though, so it's designed to be really tough. We have this select button here, that diamond button, and now we can go in and do like registration, my e-bike, change the screens, Bluetooth, system settings, information. I want to go into this. You can registration, frequently asked questions, intro, certificate, license info. The intro is kind of cool. So if you got this bike, you would go through this and say, okay, let's see what this thing can offer. More or less support with plus or minus. Support levels displayed in the status bar. This is your performance compared to the motor. So your power is like the little light color, and then the motor power is below it, and they kind of add together. Oh yeah. And the quick menus, just all kinds of the great readouts here. This is, you know, software that gets improved over time, that the bike shop can kind of help you keep up to date and walk you through. So to sort of illustrate the noise of the motor, I like to go up to turbo, and that's the highest level of operation. The higher cadence tends to be where you hear the noise as well. We pretty much maxed out the top speed right there. Pretty stable because of those slightly wider tires. They're very forgiving. They're going to help you roll over things, almost like a 29er sort of feel, but a little bit more width and cushion and just traction. I definitely can hear the like, but again, very impressed. I'm very impressed. It's not as loud, nearly as loud as some of the older Bosch Performance Line CX motors. We're not exactly on all mountain terrain here, but still having fun. Hey, buddy. Feels like floating on air. It's awesome. I had a fun time out here, always smiling when I get to try a new bike, and especially one that's so fun and comfortable. You know, I have some knee injuries and back and neck stuff from car accidents when I was younger, and I really appreciate the comfort. It feels like I can still get out there and ride a mountain bike and go up the hills. And with this one, you know, I'm pretty lightweight. I'm like 135 pounds. If you're heavier, and if you're going up steeper terrain, and just the bobbing and the weight of this bike, it's nice to have that extra battery for peace of mind. So this would be a really great bike for someone who has a little bit of range anxiety and wants to actually go the distance or climb and, you know, use turbo mode the whole time. I hope this has helped you guys out. You know, it's fun to get to look at this new stuff. I really appreciate BULLS. They kind of sent this bike out to City Cycles here in Canada. They set it up, and then they sort of support me on the bike. I got to hang on to it for several days and really go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And I realize my reviews are pretty long because of it, but my goal is just to give you, you know, all the details and the perspective on like why it costs so much, and you know, where the trade-offs are going to be, where they've compromised. And frankly, I think they've done an excellent job with this bike, and it's unique. It's sort of in a new category that there really aren't too many options, and I think they've chosen really well. So for all the details, the measurements and stuff that I've done, that's back at ElectricBikeReview.com. There's also a forum there for Bulls specifically, so you can ask other people what they think. Maybe they have just one of the other Evo all-mountain models, not the dual battery. Ask how it's held up. You can see some dealers and stuff back at the site. There's like a dealer tool, and then there's also a comparison tool, so you can determine like, well, is it worth the extra money for that extra battery, or do I just want to buy an extra power pack or something and put it in a backpack? You know, do I need them both to be on the frame like this? To be fair though, I think a lot of the recent years they've done power tube, and those tend to be a lot longer and heavier, so you know, maybe that's not the best option. Just a lot to think about with this bike. So I hope you've had fun. I certainly have. I love you guys. I'll have some more reviews up in the future. Ride safe. We'll see you next time.